As part of its 2024 budget earlier this year, the BC NDP focused in on housing speculators, and I put that in quotations. David Eby said families shouldn't have to compete with house-flipping investors when they are trying to buy a home. But the CEO of the BC Real Estate Association is taking another stance. In an op-ed piece for Business in Vancouver, Trevor Coote says housing speculators should be praised, not demonized. And Trevor Coote is on the line with us right now. Hi there, and good afternoon to you.
Hi.
Trevor,
I couldn't be in studio with you today.
Oh, well, this is the next best thing. Thanks for making time for us. It was interesting. This caught our attention. Why did you want to write this op-ed piece about speculators?
So I think the first thing I want to clarify is the content of the article that I wrote versus the headline that BIV, Business in Vancouver, attached to the article. The content, the idea behind the article was really about the words. It was about the labels being used, and just throwing caution to anybody out there, in this case, the NDP government, that we just want to be careful when we use a label for a group of people that we're writing policy on or changing the rules for. But capturing other people who are actually contributing very positively to the market and to the looking for innovative solutions to the housing situation that we find ourselves in.
Okay, go back to why you wanted to write this piece in the first place.
Well, just for that, so that I could raise the attention of understanding that if we're going to use a label to identify a small group of people, but it's capturing a larger group, I think the community, folks at large, should understand that an investor out there, a small mom and pop that is just trying to get by, but considers themselves an investor, a larger organization that is trying to be innovative, create some creative solutions around housing and housing development, and considers themselves an investor, and by all means, all of them are speculating, that if we use those labels to capture a smaller group that the government is rightly looking at writing some policy for, that we can start to maybe create an environment that other investors, other innovators, other risk takers out there might look at BC as being not as friendly for them.
Okay, so this comes down to terminology in your view. And
yeah,
as I mentioned,
very much so.
The provincial government is calling speculators house-flipping investors. I mean, how do you define speculator in this mix?
But that's the thing and that it's kind of the world we live in, is that a word with a particular definition, and I actually put the definition in the article. I don't have it in front of me, but it does say folks who are looking for a return on investment, but take on the risk where they might not get that return. And that is the definition of speculation. And so we just being careful that we're not cutting a wider swath with that term and making it seem unfriendly to other folks.
Well, and what have you seen of the effect of that? You know, that's this term speculators is getting, such a bad reputation.
Yeah, I guess probably no direct. I don't have any anecdotal examples for you, but it's really just being out in the real estate industry. It's being out representing 26,000 small business owners in British Columbia, and being aware that this could have ramifications. And it's just throwing up a caution flag.
Right. Now, what would you say is a better way to describe, address some of the consequences coming from, I'll use the word speculation. You could use investment. What do you see?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think the idea is that if there is going to be a conversation around policy, around creating a scenario that can address a particular situation, and let's use the flipping situation, because that's kind of where this terminology has been most directly used and kind of identified. If we're talking about the flipping environment, then let's just talk about that environment. Let's talk about the solutions, the challenges that exist, and then the solutions. And in this case, the government decided a flipping tax was going to be a viable solution, and rightly or wrongly, that's what they decided. And have that conversation. That's a policy decision, and can help mitigate some of the challenges in that particular environment. But then to start using speculation or speculators as the terminology that's attached to that one policy environment, to me, it just throws out the risk that you're grabbing a lot of other people who are also speculating. So many people in this province are doing really good work and taking on a lot of risk to try and provide services or have a business in our local communities, and they're all investing and they're all speculating that it's going to work.
But
And
isn't
I just want to be really cognizant of
but
that.
isn't the end result the same? I mean, regardless of what you're calling people? I mean, I just want to share some numbers from Stats Canada. In the first quarter of last year, investors made up 30% of home purchases, and that was up 28% from the year before. And at the same time, we have first-time home buyers, the numbers of first-time home buyers dropping. For many, costs are out of reach. I mean, don't speculators or, slash investors that we're talking about this afternoon, don't they drive up prices for people who are looking for a home?
So great question, and I'll counter that with an example. I'm in Ottawa right now. I had the pleasure of being at a conference where I got to hear from a whole bunch of market and non-market housing organizations looking at innovative and forward-thinking solutions. And one of these groups is a certified B Corp, purpose-driven, but for-profit investment organization. They own 33,000 doors now in 4 provinces. And part of their mandate, part of their solution is involving the tenant, which they call a customer. They don't even identify them as a tenant, as part of the housing environment. So they don't have property managers. They provide education and skills trade training so that these people can participate in the upkeep and the maintenance and earn income for that. And they're creating a community around this. By all definitions, they are an investor. And by all definitions, they are speculating that they are going to be able to make this work. But they're being innovative. They're trying to do something different that creates a different environment for tenants and customers in this case. And like investment is needed to create housing. It's just how we go about it is what's going to evolve. And I think we just need to be careful that if we're just saying investors and speculators are bad in general, we miss the opportunity to really highlight some new innovative forward-thinking measures that are going to help positively impact the housing situation that we find ourselves in.
No, it's interesting to hear what you're observing there in Ottawa. You're at a real estate policy conference there. It seems at the outset like a responsible approach, but you're well aware that does not happen everywhere, right? If you survey renters across Metro Vancouver, rents have gone up dramatically over the past few years. What do you see as that relationship between the number of, I'm going to use both terms, speculators slash investors in the market and how much people are paying for rent?
There's definitely a correlation between housing and housing availability and rents all across Canada. And in order to address that, we need more housing. But we're not going to get more housing by not having investors assist with the cash injection and the investment, the take on the risk of being able to create that housing in British Columbia and across Canada. There's a direct correlation between the need for money and the development of housing, which everybody agrees we need supply. And so it's not saying that there's not scenarios where investors might be taking advantage or where investors are creating environments where they're benefiting more than tenants. Let's create policy to address that. There's no question. But let's not use labels that are going to capture all of the people that we need in order to collectively come together and address the housing scenario that we find ourselves in.
Well, housing affordability, this is the scenario, isn't it? It's a big, big problem, maybe one of the biggest problems as we, headed to the polls and voted in the BC election. I mean, how do you see, when we talk about housing affordability, what do you see as the role of speculators or investors helping with this issue?
Well, and I think that's a really big piece of it, is the size of the challenge, right? And you hit the nail on the head. Like, it was one of the biggest issues coming into the election, and the reality is, Gloria, it's going to be an issue for a long time. None of this is going to happen overnight, and so that's part of this conversation. Is there is a role for everyone to play. There is a role for the government to create an environment where investment money can come in and act as a positive. And rightly, they need to create that environment that protects all folks who are benefiting from that positive, that cash injection. It's a really, really tough balance. There's no question. And especially with, the financial challenge that you've pointed out, that tenants find themselves in, homeowners find themselves in, prospective buyers trying to save a down payment find themselves in. But I think, again, just coming back to the terminology, let's be more collaborative. Let's create an environment where we're acknowledging that everybody is needed, and let's address the scenarios individually that we're trying to do that the government wants to protect folks under. And I completely appreciate that that's part of their role.
Trevor, I'm really glad you came on with us this afternoon. Interesting to just talk about your op-ed piece, and we'll let you get back to your conference.
Really appreciate it, Gloria. Thanks for the time.
Trevor Coote is CEO of the BC Real Estate Association. I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this. Please feel free to send us an email onthecoast@cbc.ca. onthecoast@cbc.ca.